subscribe to our channel of light fluid. Welcome back to Lyre. And things are not looking good. We still don't know who killed the king. But will Lyall find something out? Maybe. Winter's harsh retribution on summer grows more relentless with each passing day. Flakes of snow gently fall down from the sky above, landing on Lyall's dark brown fur. The ground beneath his paws is frigid. After being outside all morning, he's gotten used to it. Most of the people in these parts are used to it. Even the plants are barely affected by the frozen shower of flurry. He weakly kicks at a small pile of snow, watching it toss up into the air before landing on the ground ahead of him. Taking these walks helps him think, and being out here is better than being in the castle. For the past few days he's been trying to do everything that he can to help Ivor. He hasn't been very successful though. The only contact he's been able to make with him is through a couple of small letters. And he's not allowed to write anything important on them. Nothing helpful, at least. So they usually just end up being notes with words of encouragement or promises. It wouldn't matter anyway, given the fact Ivor can't send anything back. Lyall stopped sending them after a while anyway. The fact they need to be read by others is a breach of his privacy he'd rather not go through. As he slowly walks down the path, his eyes drift in the direction of the small pond underneath the dragon apricot tree. It was only a few weeks ago when he and Ivor were sitting under that tree. The memory of that day always brings a smile to his face. He'd never been able to be so open with someone like that before. Without it blowing up in his face, at least. He was scared. But no matter how nervous he was, he felt comfortable. It was such a happy moment. Now it leaves a bittersweet taste in his mouth. Lyall's paws brush against the stiff grass underneath the snow as he walks toward the pond. The idea of showing this to Ivor fills him with a little bit of joy. Winter in Lyre is nothing like winter in Erin from what he's heard. In Erin it rarely snows. If it does, most of the plants, such as flowers and things like that need to be kept warm, or they'll die. But here in Lyre, all of the plants have adapted to the climate. Sure, they lose a bit of their colour and become stiff, but other than that they're usually fine. It really creates a beautiful winter. Lyall stops by the tree stump at the edge of the pond and sits down, moving his cape so he doesn't tug on it while sitting. His tail brushes against the snow, and it sends a chill throughout his body. But it's a chill that feels nice. His trousers are thick enough that his rear isn't immediately shocked by the cold surface of the stump. Even then, his fur does an excellent job at keeping him from being too cold. Once he's relaxed, he leans forward with his paws clasped together in his lap, looking down at the water's frozen surface. He reminisces on that bittersweet memory once more, thinking about when Ivor picked pieces off the rest of his apricot and tossed them into the pond. Small fish would swim up and swarm the pieces, pushing them around the water's surface, creating ripples across the whole pond. Ivor was being very quiet. Lyre had already finished all of his fruit, so he sat there watching Ivor, wondering if the prior conversation really went as well as he thought it did. And the small body of water is completely frozen. Lyall picks up one of the apricots and examines it. It's rock solid and covered in frost. He takes off one of his gloves and holds the pink fruit in his paw. The cold skin brushes up against his paw pads and sends a shiver up his arm. He then looks down in the palm of his paw and stares at it with a melancholy look. The pads on his paw are dark and rough, with large claws coming out from the tips of his fingers. The rest is covered in fur. Compared to the soft skin and long articulate fingers on Ivor's hand, they're much different. He chuckles to himself. No matter what he thinks about, his thoughts always lead back to Ivor. It can't be helped. Whether he's thinking about how awful their situation is, or how much he cares for him, Ivor's always on his mind. He looks back down at his paw again. A human and a wolf. Even in Erin, something like that must be rare. But in Lyre? Lyall can't think of any time he's heard of something like that happening. Similar things have happened before, but usually there's at least something akin between the two partners. Lyall loves him very much, but even he has to admit there's a bit of a gap between the two of them biologically. Before he can continue to delve deeper into his thoughts, his ears perk up as he hears boots crunching through the snow. He lifts his head and turns in the direction of the noise. Elizabeth approaches from the path just outside the entrance into the castle. She stares at him for a moment before continuing toward the pond. Her footwear crunches through the snow with a deep, gritty noise. She's in her usual robes and doesn't look too cold, aside from the pale skin on her face turning red at the nose and cheeks. The only thing different about her is a pair of wool mittens. Surprising she even has the time to come out here. The investigation is still going on. She rarely gets a moment to get away from it all. Lyall, on the other hand, isn't allowed near the investigation as much as he'd like. The only reason he's even able to be a part of it is because he's a high-ranking individual and, technically, a witness. Not only that, but despite the restrictions Adris have put on him, Lyall's power of the Royal Guard is still as strong as ever. When it comes to anything other than Ivor, of course. So despite Adris and his wishes, Lyall needs to be there to lead the Royal Guard in their inspection. Liz steps off the small path and approaches the pond. "I thought you might be out here." Her voice travels across the pond like a hawk taking a sharp dive. "Are you looking for me?" Even when walking through a small layer of snow, her figure is as straight and balanced as it always is. When she gets closer, Lyall can't help but chuckle in his head at the reality that only when he's sitting down are they at eye level. "No, I just assumed I'd come across you. It's not often I come out here to think, especially the weather. I do stroll through here sometimes." She looks down at the stump he's sitting on and smirks. "But I see my thinking spot has already been taken." Lyall blushes slightly and jumps up from his seat. "By all means, here." "It was only a joke." "No, I insist. You've been working hard lately. You should be resting. Not out here in the cold." She stands there for a moment, looking at him with a smile that spoke plenty of words, before sitting down. "Sometimes you're too kind." "Well, as long as nobody mistakes it for weakness." "Of course." Lyall walks over the tree and stands by the trunk, leaning his back against the cold surface. Liz sits there quietly for only a moment, most likely gathering her thoughts before speaking again. "Lyall." "Yes?" "I know it's not like we haven't seen each other in a while, but I just now realise I've never properly asked how you've been taking all of this. He scuffs his paw at the ground, looking down and avoiding her eye contact. Well, I've been taking it as well as I can, I suppose. He brings back his paw and kicks one of the fruit, watching it skate across the surface of the pond, before slowly coming to a stop near the bank on the other side. I know Raynar was like family to you, and I can certainly confirm without a doubt that he adored you. For some reason, Lyall can't help but think about the depressing funeral that was held only a couple of days after Raynar's murder. It was a private gathering only those closest to him were allowed to attend. The burial was held at twilight in the gardens where Elena was also laid to rest. It was a sad day, and not a single person spoke. Instead, everyone just stood there quietly mourning. Adria said a few words. Rather than that, he just silently sat in front of the grave, gently placing small flowers around both headstones. Lyall wanted to stay. When everyone started to depart and Adris made no move to get up, Lyall knew that he too should probably go. I wish none of this happened. I know. We all do. This whole tragedy might just plunge this kingdom into war. Lyall shivers at the idea of war breaking out. I'm sure another solution will present itself. She continues to look at the ground, her eyes shrouded in gloom. Both of them sit there in silence for some time before she speaks up. I spoke with Lord Ivor the other day. I couldn't remember if I told you or not. Lyall straightens up after hearing this. No, you didn't. How's he doing? Not as bad as one would think, but still, he's not doing too great. Just then Lyall's chest feels like it twists into a knot. He leans against the tree, sliding down the trunk and slumping against it, seating himself onto the cold snow beneath him. Nothing comes to mind that he could say, his thoughts completely clouded. Elizabeth's concerned voice breaks him out of his daze. Are you okay? I'm sorry if that bothered you. Even in the midst of his swirling thoughts, Lyall musters up the energy to give a polite response. No, it's fine. You're only answering my hasty questions. She relaxes a bit and places her hands on her lap. I know you have a strong devotion to him, but the rumours don't do it justice. They're a bit of an understatement, actually. Oh yeah, the rumours. Just a bunch of fools who talk about it if there's nothing better to do. Everyone talks about it, as you probably know. Well, I know firsthand. I wish people would just mind their own damn business. Trust me, so do I. It would make everything a lot easier. I just want you to know that I'm not judging you. Well, I know. I was however shocked with that display during the party. Lyall stumps more into the tree, his face being surrounded by the fluff around his neck. Yeah. I don't get the wrong idea. It's not in the way you think. After the initial shock, I was actually quite interested. Oh, really? Yes. The amount of courage you must have taken for all of that. Oh, trust me, it wasn't as courageous as you think. Still, it was impressive. Especially Ivor's part in it. The way he told off all those pompous halfwits from the higher houses. God, the looks on their faces were priceless. He really hated that. Yeah, it was great. The interesting part about it was Ivor's reaction. No normal person in his position would dare to do something like that. Compared to that day he stumbled into the chambers with his thoughts scattered and managed to throw out the window, I'd say it was an improvement, but still. He's so different from every other ambassador I've come across. Like that one from Driss. He's strange. There's no doubt he's politically trained. Unlike Ivor, who... Are you saying Ivor isn't good at his job? No, not at all. I like that fact he's so different from the others. Besides, I haven't known him long enough to be able to make such a judgment. Lyall looks down, embarrassed at his rushed attempt to defend an Ivor. Sorry, I misunderstood. He hasn't had the chance to do much yet. Everything that he's done so far has been done exceptionally. Mostly dealing with the Crown's money. Making sure Reynard didn't run the kingdom dry with another one of his extravagant parties. Someone had to. She looks down with a smile on her face. It quickly fades once the levity of the conversation dissipates. I've gotten off track, though. I know that you're a good man. When you were a young lad, you always strove to do what's right. It wasn't in your best interest. But... She lets out a sigh. But sometimes I think you're in over your head. There it is. Lyall lets out a short exhale through his nose, causing a puff of cold breath to appear in front of it. I want to trust you on this. Really, I do. There's not much for me to go off other than your word. Lyall seems to think further into his armour. As if he'll disappear into himself at any given moment. Do you have any evidence that can help clear his name? Anything to bring to the trial? Of course, but I don't think it'll be enough. Anything you haven't told us yet that could be useful? Everything I know has been laid out for all to hear. Along with all the evidence everyone's been looking at for the past week. It's almost as if they're trying to make it seem like they haven't already made the decision. She places her hands on her lap, looking down then with a thoughtful face. I know you have these feelings for him. I'm happy for you. But you're risking a lot right now. More than you could possibly imagine. She brushes the snow off her legs and stands up, looking him in the eye. He looks up at her and sits up straight, realizing she's leaving. You're going to find yourself at a crossroads soon. We all are. The question is, will you risk it all or will you abandon everything? Lyall clumsily stands over the confused look on his face. What? It's just something to think about. Something I've been thinking about for a long time. Not the warmest note to end on, but I assure you, giving it some thought will prove useful. She brings her hands behind her back and gives a nod. It's about time I went back inside the warm walls of the castle. Of course. Listen, Lyall. His ears perk up as she continues. I put my trust in you. Whatever happens, I want you to know. I just want what's best for this kingdom. And I'm sorry for anything that happens. Lyall's attempt to come up with any response to what she said slowly dissipates as she walks away towards the entrance to the courtyard. One of the castle guards comes out the door, safely ushering her into the hall. Lyall looks up into the air, snowflakes falling down gracefully like stars against a foggy blue sky. What she said doesn't feel so reassuring, though. If anything, it just makes the rest of this week feel like it's going by faster. Everything seems to be slowly creeping up on them with every passing day. This feeling of dread will be enough to make anyone crumble. That on top of the constant thought of Ivor sitting alone in that cell, slowly losing all hope. Lyall looks down at his paw, the glove still firmly grasped in it. Little claws at each fingertip jingle and clank into each other as he grips it tighter. I swear I'll... He releases his grip, sliding the glove back onto his paw. I'll get you out of there, no matter what. I'll prove it to them. He says this while looking down at the ground, as if he's talking in the direction of Ivor, down in their cell. There's one thing he could do, though. He needs to go to the court chambers and look over the evidence. Certain someone might be able to help him identify something. This might be his only chance to get information that nobody else could. He quickly stands up and begins to walk away from the pond. He's done enough thinking. It's time to take action. With each twist and turn through the castle halls, Lyall's heart beats faster, his body filled with anxiousness and hope. Contrary to his large size, his paws are silent and quick as he swiftly makes his way down the corridor. The court chambers are just up ahead. The room is heavily guarded, along with Ivor's quarters and Reynar's bedchambers. Nobody except for people participating in the investigation have been allowed in Ivor's room since the solstice. They did a complete search of the room, finding nothing but expensive clothes and a cluttered desk full of notes and documents, along with a few embarrassing drawings Lyall had made that he kept. Thankfully, the guards won't stop him. He may not be able to visit with Ivor, but they can't bar him off from this. As he approaches the door, there's a few castle guards standing outside. They stand up straight and look forward. Lyall walks up to the door and takes out his keys, unlocking it with a large clanking sound. He opens the door and leans in through the threshold. It's empty. The candles on the chandelier above the table are lit. The curtains are drawn. The room is lifeless. The room shouldn't be this empty. He pauses for a moment, wondering if something is wrong, then walks into the room with caution, closing the door behind him. The table went from being a place for guests to eat to being cluttered with papers, documents, and all sorts of evidence important to the investigation. The chairs are pushed out and facing all kinds of directions. Reynar's clothes from that night are laying flat on the table, completely spread out, appearing to have been examined multiple times. The dried blood on the suit sends a cold rush up Lyall's body. He looks away from it for now. That's not what he came here for. Along with the suit are pieces of the ripped drapes which have been collected and laid out next to it. Letters, documents, more letters. The table would look like an absolute mess to anyone who didn't know their way around it. Lyall spots the thing he's looking for, not before his eyes glance across some of the sketches he made. Liz knew of Lyall's hobby and asked him to sketch out the scene before they removed any of the evidence. It was early in the morning, and none of them had slept, so his drawings didn't come out that great. On top of the fact he wasn't enjoying a single moment of it. The things he was asked to sketch out that night were uncomfortable. But it had to be done, and it helps, so... Thankfully, when I was looking at them last, he decided to cover them up with a sketch of the scene from the entrance. Not pleasant, but much less detailed. A shock inside he'd rather not remember. With a nasty twist forming in his stomach, he sets the sketches back on the table and looks down at the murder weapon. It's a unique yet simple rondel dagger with a long blade. It's nothing too classy, but certainly not cheap. A pretty thing for a peasant to spend their life savings on, but nothing a noble would use. The guard is made from gold, but it feels very light. The dagger doesn't look like it's been used much either. There's a clean finish aside from the blood that's been left on it. There's no signs of scratches or dents though. Everything about it seems flawless. In fact, there's no mark signifying the maker is annoying. However, there's one thing that's odd about this dagger that's always bothered Lyall. These blades were typically used along with a thrusting sword such as a rapier or an estoc. A secondary weapon used to gain an edge on your opponent. Your typical dagger would be much better for assassinating someone. This dagger would still get the job done though. The blade is sharp enough to cut a hair straight down the centre and the tip is very pointed. Just looking at it is enough to make Lyall nervous, but holding it sends an ominous chill up his back and around his shoulders. The castle blacksmith already had a look at it and said it's a standard northern dagger you get from any smiths in Erin or Lyre. Lyall doesn't trust his judgment though. The man used to be very involved in smithing and knew a lot about the different types of blades and forges they came from. He hasn't been in that field lately. Now he just forges weapons and armour specifically for the castle guard, along with the royal guard. Wise beyond his years, but rusty in his knowledge. Lyall knows of one man who might know the origin of this blade. Eden. If Eden can figure out where the blade might have come from and bring it before the court, it could turn the tides of the trial entirely. Eden can confirm that Ivor didn't buy a single weapon when he's in his forge. It's not solid proof, but it's something. Lyall takes the blade and gently puts it in a small satchel. Well, let's hope you can figure this out, Eden. As he makes his way to the door, it opens wide and fast, the door clunking to the wall behind it. Coincidentally, Bjorn stands in the doorway, his large body taking up most of the frame. He has an annoyed grimace plastered on his muzzle. Read. He looks around the room with a confused look on his face. Who are you just talking to? Lyall tucks the satchel more behind his back and underneath his cape as he backs up a bit. Nobody. I was just thinking out loud. Your knowing about what Lyall planned to do would certainly cause some trouble. Trouble he'd rather not have to deal with. Having to explain to someone like Adris that he wants to take the murder weapon is as undesirable as a confrontation with the killer himself. What, we're looking over evidence or something? Bjorn glances at the table with disinterest. Yeah, just looking. Trying to piece everything together. All by yourself? The old bear stands up straight, his towering figure rising above Lyall's by a good distance. Yes, is there something wrong with that? A tone of annoyance in Lyall's voice slips out on the last few words. You're allowed to do that? Of course I am. Don't forget, as Captain of the Royal Guard, I still have partial supervision of this investigation and the trial. Bjorn grunts and lets out a chuckle, his frown still sitting on his lips. It doesn't matter. I was just leaving. Lyall goes to step around him, but he speaks up. You shouldn't have it. Lyall stops in his tracks, his heartbeat rising slightly. What? You shouldn't have a supervision over this. Everyone knows it. Everyone's thinking about it. Even you should understand it's wrong. Lyall's shocked face is nothing compared to the sight of his hackles rising. That's not for you to decide. It's not wrong in the slightest. Someone has to support the innocent man locked in that cell. Lyall continues to walk past him and grabs the doorknob. I won't stand for this disrespect, Sir Bjorn. I'm leaving. Lyall doesn't wait for Bjorn to retort as the door closes behind him. The guards outside the door are still as statues. Lyall walks in the opposite direction, down the stairs. Bjorn's constant disrespect of Lyall is annoying. As long as he does what he's told and doesn't get in his way, he honestly couldn't care less. It's weird being a young captain to an old beast like that. That's just the way things are. Age isn't a large factor in the capabilities to lead. Maybe he'll realise that someday. Lyall steps off the bottom of the stairs and reaches the door to the passage which leads to the village. He looks around for opening the door. While he can tell, nobody was following him. He takes out his keys, unlocking the door swiftly and swinging it open. Cold air blows out from the doorway into his face. He steps down the spiral staircase, closing the door behind him and locking it. The stairs are wet with cold water. It makes him wish he had a pair of those shoes Ivor has to wear. They probably won't fit on his paws, though. Descending down the stairs, he reaches the bottom and begins to carefully make his way through the tunnel. Each step he takes becomes colder and colder, some of the puddles beneath him reacting to the movement, glowing bright blue like they always do. Once he reaches the trapdoor at the end, he unlocks it and pushes up as far as his arms let him. He lifts himself up the stairs and tries to let his eyes adjust to the light. It's snowing out right now. Each snowflake quickly melts before it can even touch the ground. Other than a thin layer of snow here and there, the Vitality fire lanterns seem to be doing their job as always. He steps out of the small alley into the village square. It's not as busy as it usually is, but people are still going about their day. For an obvious reason, everything feels more depressing now. It may just be his mood though. There's a few people walking around and shopping for stuff. A couple of kids are playing by the fountain, one of them flipping a few coins into the water. John's outside the bakery adding logs to the stove. Always a good, hard-working lad. Logs like small branches when he grabs them. Lyall's ears perk up the familiar sound of metal striking an anvil from within Eden's forge. Eden must be working since dawn, because from the sound of it every contraption and furnace in his forge is running. Lyall secures the satchel at his side and lifts the tarp in the doorway, his ears brushing as he ducks through the arch. The entire forge is suffocated in dry, hot air. Eden's bent over, poking the inside of the furnace, his body shining with sweat. His apron is completely dirty, and all sorts of tools are thrown about the ground. He stands up and turns around, jumping a bit at the side of Lyall. Lyall? Quiet as always, I see. Lyall rubs the back of his head while looking down at the ground. Oh, I'm not trying to be. Yeah, sure. Holler my name next time. He sets down a fire poker and turns back around, wiping his paws with a rag. How you been? Oh, a mess. Yeah, I bet. A long pause floats through the air. Before Lyall can get to the point, Eden speaks up again. Such an awful thing to happen. I can only imagine how it's been affecting you. As much of a shock as it was, life still goes on for us folk outside the castle. So, I can't but feel a little depressed lately. He bites his lip while looking at his anvil, the top of it scratched and busted all over. I also heard about who they said did it. The human fella you've been following around. What was his name again? Ivor. Trust me, he didn't do it. Eden shrugs his shoulders. I hope he didn't. You seem nice. Well, enough about that. What can I do for you? Don't tell me winter's dull again. You can't have done that much training. No, it's not that. I wanted to ask you a few questions. About what? Lyall pulls the satchel around to his front and lifts the flap, revealing the handle of the blade. He carefully pulls it out and places it on top of the anvil. I need you to tell me everything you can about this blade. Eden cocks an eyebrow at the dagger and rubs his chin. Well, I thought you didn't like fancy daggers, big guy. What exactly do you want to know about it? Where is it from? What's it made of? Do you recognize the maker? Anything could help me clear Ivor's name. Eden picks up the knife gently and examines it. Is this the blade that... It is. A slight grimace appears on his face. Turning it around in his paws, he studies it with extra care, trying to look at every detail. What about that castle blacksmith? Didn't you have anything to say about this? Yeah, I don't even know why they consulted him in the first place. Only works on special orders. He's been out of their trade for decades. Lyall wrings his paws, looking at him with concern. On this matter, I trust your judgment more than anyone's. Eden holds the dagger close to the light from the furnace, runs a claw across the guard. Then rubs them with his paw pads along the pommel. What did the old man say? Said it's a regular blade. Could be purchased from any smith in Erin or Lyre. Well, he's wrong. It was a very easy mistake to make, though. Lyall leans forward, placing his paws on the anvil and resting his weight on it. I knew it. For anyone else, this would look like a simple rondel dagger. A rapier's best friend. He points to the sharp tip and holds it in his standard grip. Well, that's the case with this one. But it's not that simple of a blade. Although thrusting swords became a widely used weapon in Northern Erin, they were created in Lyre. Other kingdoms had many knights and soldiers trained in the art of dealing with such blades. Thing is, as in trade between the three kingdoms was expertly established, so were ideas. Places the blade back onto the anvil. The fires of the forge cast a warm glow upon the blade. Ideas were shared and techniques learned. Eventually all sorts of weapons were being forged all around Tigran. Weapons considered to be foreign were rare and sought after in their homelands. A dagger like this was definitely forged in Driss. He nudges the blade across the anvil in Lyall's direction as he says this. Really? I've seen what's like it before in the few trips I've taken to Driss. A wavy blade is something you could go off of, but here's the main reason. He points to the guard and pommel. This isn't gold. It's not? That there is pure enemite. It's a somewhat rare metal that's similar to gold in quality. Almost as rare as Vekrite, and it's found primarily in the south. It weighs less and it's stronger. He picks it up and holds it out to Lyall. This blade is from Driss. Kadach. Sorry, what? Nothing. Lyall takes the blade from him and gently places it back in his satchel. Thank you for your help, Eden. No, it's no problem at all. I won't even charge you for my time. Haha, very funny. I'll be seeing you, hopefully. Lyall turns to leave. Breton stops him. Hey, Lyall. Yes? Heard other things about that Ivor fella. Lyall turns around and leans against the wall behind him. Eden. I heard that you're at it again. That's my business. I know, just seems like it's happening all over again. Everyone's forming mean opinions about it. Lyall looks up at the ceiling and sighs. Listen to me for a moment, will you? I know they made it difficult for us to be together. I know they spread horrible rumours which were quickly silenced and not forgotten, but... Lyall starts to feel hot in the face and he slumps into himself. I saw the way he looks at you. His eyes held the truth. Lyall's blush becomes more and more visible as he continues. Promise me something. What? Don't let them do it again. Lyall stands up straight and looks him in the eyes. I won't, Eden. Good. If there's anything else I can do to help, let me know. I'm still your friend. No matter how much you distance yourself from everyone. Lyall walks over the doorway and Eden lifts the tarp to the side. He rubs the back of his head and looks up at Eden with a concerned and embarrassed gaze. Oh, thank you, Eden. I'm sorry. No worries. They step outside of the chilly air and Eden basks in it, trying to cool off. This visit was very productive. A bit too productive in some areas. Well, I'm honestly glad I was able to help. Hopefully everything gets resolved. Well, I can only hope at this point. I should really stop being a stranger, though. I'll come visit you again soon if things go well. Lyall takes a few steps toward the alley while looking at Eden. Before he can go any further, he crashes into something which causes him to stumble back slightly. Watch your step, Captain. As Lyall regains his footing, he notices that Bjorn has slipped the satchel off his purse and is now opening the flap. When he looks back up, what little subtlety he had in his eyes is now completely gone. I knew it. Sneaking off a piece of evidence if you own the bloody investigation. Lyall reaches forward, taking the satchel from Bjorn, who basically lets him have it. I was not sneaking. What are you doing lurking in the alley behind my forge? Following this reckless fool. Bjorn gestures to Lyall with his large paw, not taking his eyes off him for a moment. Lyall's face becomes flushed and he grips the satchel at his side. "You're coming with me." Lyall goes to walk past him. "We'll speak about this." Before he can finish his sentence, Bjorn grabs him by the shoulders and slams him up against the wall. His head hits the wall behind him before he can recover as another painful blow to his face. He's then shoved back toward the end of the alley, stumbling slightly. "Lyall! Stay out of this, Eden." Bjorn punched him directly in the nose, his fist splattered with blood. Lyall Glory tasted in his mouth, the potent metallic flavour running across his tongue. "You bastard! Have you lost your mind? Well, that's the same as you, boy. You think you're completely absolved all punishment because you're the captain? It makes me sick." He already has his paw firmly placed on the grip of his sword. Lyall feels a rage grow inside of him that he hadn't felt in a long time. He slowly raises his arm up behind him and grips the handle of his own blade. "You draw steel on me? You've been meddling with this investigation for far too long. You let your emotions get in the way of every decision you make, and it's going to bring this entire trial into chaos. And that's absurd. I think that's what I'm trying to prevent, you brute." "It's true, Uncle." "Shut your trap." Eden looks like he's about to say something but stops himself. Looks over at Lyall, a worried look filling his eyes. "What do you plan to do?" Bjorn taps his chin lightly while glaring at Lyall. "Teaching you a lesson might be good. You've been a bad dog. Honestly, I think it'd be best if I just killed the Iranian bastard. Then you can go back to thinking with your brains instead of that thing between your legs, like a good captain." Heard him say this triggers something in Lyall he's only felt on a few occasions. The purest kind of rage. His body feels like a fire was lit inside of it, flowing through his veins and boiling his blood. "He's only trying to..." Bjorn whirls around and yells at Eden. "Stay out of this, boy! Already warned you once." Lyall takes this chance to draw his sword, the blade sliding out the leather sheath with ease. He dashes back while doing this, put some distance between him and Bjorn. Once his footing is secured, he lowers the sword in front of his body and assumes a plough guard. If it's going to be a fight, he's going to defend himself. Since it's Bjorn, there's going to be a fight. Bjorn's already turned his gaze back to Lyall and smirks a sinister grin. "Looks like you're one drawing steel." "I'll go get help." Eden runs off in the direction of the castle. "You meant to hurt me with that pretty thing?" "I only mean to defend myself." Bjorn reaches behind his shoulder and drags the heavy sword off of his back. The blade glistens in the light and is twice the size of Lyall's own sword. "You're coming with me one way or another. I'd like to see that happen. You won't be dealing out your own sick idea of justice this time." Bjorn rushes forward, sword raised and ready to be brought down upon him. Lyall steadies himself and prepares for the hit. Bjorn brings a heavy hunk of metal down upon Lyall's own blade, but he swiftly parries it and dodges to the side. The blade slams into the ground with a mighty clang, sparkling against the bricks. Lyall's Vekrite sword rings throughout the air as he swings it back around, away from Bjorn. "You know, you never commanded respect. You weren't fit to be captain." Lyall points his blade in Bjorn's direction, defending himself against the next blow. "I never wanted your respect. I never needed it. I demand your loyalty. The same loyalty we all showed his kingdom." Bjorn scoffs at him, pacing around the wolf with a calm yet savage look in his eyes. "Loyalty? What good has it done you? You've been a slave to loyalty your whole life." A small crowd has started to form just outside of the alley. Nobody dares to get closer though. Bjorn takes his chance to swing at Lyall again. This time Lyall brings the sword in front of him, grabbing the end of it with his gloved paw and bracing against the flat of his blade. Bjorn's sword clashes against Lyall's, sending sparks all over the latter, throwing him slightly off balance before sending his weight back into the blade and throwing Bjorn's sword to the side of him. Bjorn staggers back and grips his weapon tighter. King Raynar's Lyall dog. Always ready to do whatever his masters ask of him. Lyall feels a deep hot feeling swelling inside of him. Feeling only grows stronger with each second that passes. Quickly rushes forward, throwing a flurry of blows at the bear, which he barely manages to block. To an outsider, he's a blue and white blur, thrashing his opponent with precise strikes. Bjorn stumbles, almost falls to his knees, while swinging his blade horizontally, forcing Lyall to back off. Through panting breaths, he mocks him again. Yes, you were loyal, but your loyalty ended where the benefits stopped. I knew King would be as forgiving as little stunts you've been pulling. Lyall rushes forward and swings his sword against Bjorn's with a heavy clash. Sparks fly throughout the air as their blades strike across each other, a heavy screeching noise. You don't know what you're talking about. Trust me, I do. You see, my loyalty ended in a similar way. Each of them position their swords at different angles, one opponent trying to get the advantage over the other. When Sir Runar died and you were named his successor, I knew this kingdom was going to shit. So I started pulling stunts of my own. And they called me undisciplined for it. Lyall brings his leg up and kicks into Bjorn as hard as he can, forcing him back. You're a traitorous little bastard. I'll have that human strung up as the last thing I do. You're going to watch. Hearing this causes Lyall to enter rage like he's never felt before. Savage and wild, but calm and collected all at the same time. He needs to completely visualize his objective. Killing him isn't his goal here. He has to subdue him somehow. Wrestling him to a tough position is the only way to ensure no blood is spilled on his part. However, it presents a problem. Lyall is the superior duelist by far. If past training has shown anything, Bjorn should be the better grappler. Switching to this form of fighting gives Bjorn an advantage. It's the best way to show he was acting in self-defense. He has a chance. Lyall lets out a low growl for lunging at Bjorn, tackling him to the ground. This moment he truly looks like a wild animal as he tosses Bjorn's sword to the side with a single swing of his own. The blade clatters the ground. Lyall mounts the bear, digging his paws into his wrist with all his strength, pinning him down. He leans in, pressing hard onto Bjorn's wrists, baring his teeth. Like hell you will! All three kingdoms will be in the ground before I let you do that. Bjorn manages to wrench one of his arms out from underneath Lyall's paw, but Lyall already anticipated this. Quickly kicks his paws from the ground and twists around, still holding onto one of Bjorn's arms. The bear reaches around to grab onto one of Lyall's legs, but is ready too late. Lyall has him locked in a vicious armbar. He locks his legs around Bjorn's arm and the shoulder and pulls the appendage as hard as he can. If you think I'll let you get away with this, you're wrong! Audible grunts can be heard from the large bear, but Lyall doesn't let up. He needs to figure out his next move quickly. Before he can execute anything, Bjorn is ready back on the offensive. The bear slowly lifts his legs around the side of Lyall and positions himself under the wolf's foot. So bless him, we were both taught by the same man. He taught me everything I need to know to take you down. Before Bjorn can escape the grip, Lyall doubles down and pins the bear's head to the ground harder while tightening his hold on Bjorn's arm. Yield! In what feels like a split second, Lyall's body is thrown back to the ground as Bjorn twists around and mounts Lyall. Through it all, Lyall's legs are still locked around the bear's body. They've been forced down to wrapping around Bjorn's waist. Lyall's armor scrapes against the ground, and his cape rips as he slid back towards the wall behind him. The bear looks down at him with a sick and amused expression. I don't. Bjorn then lays a heavy punch into Lyall's face. This is then followed by several more blows. Lyall manages to block a few of them, but after a while it becomes harder. Every blow elicits a low growl from the bear. With each punch, the noises around him become more and more muffled. Then they stop. Thick blood feels like it's drowned the insides of his mouth as he sits there panting. Yawn gets off of him and he's free to catch his breath. His eyes feel swollen, he can't see out of them. He can still hear, but it's slowly fading away. I told you, you're coming with... The last thing his ears pick up is the large bear coughing and wheezing. He's breathing heavily. There's a sound of footsteps rushing to both of them. The last thing he feels is something heavy falling on top of him. This knocks the wind out of him, and he slowly loses consciousness. Cold snowflakes land on the tip of his almost numb nose. The last thing he thinks is whether Ivor's going to be safe. Well, that's a great place to leave it, so we will. There'll be more from Lyre probably early November or so. I'm trying to keep things roughly every other month at the moment. But we'll see how that goes. Hopefully I can keep up to that schedule. So yeah, early November we should be back in Lyre again. Coming up this weekend, we'll be heading off on some more distant travels. And then next week there'll be a short story. It's another of the May Wolf, the End Jams. That will be a short one to probably finish things off with the May Wolf Jam. But if you think of anything else from there I should really do, let me know and I'll check into it. But as always, before I go, I would say thanks to all my donors on Ko-fi and Patreon. Very much appreciated. And my top patrons are Andy Peng, Zamuto, Omar, Nova Starburn, Harvest Mouse Productions, Bieka, Kartek, Gomez Visser, Legacy Bucciarati, Bastian, Brian Hall, Tiger Cub, Aida Corval, Anubis Silverwind, Dissonance, Grizz, Spiderling, Kopi, Sindri Dragowolf, Evan King, Exact, Aaron Fox and Mohammed Al-Zamel. So thanks to all of them. And until we head off on our travels on the weekend, thanks for watching. Bye for now.